Well done for guys who are joining us. We'll get cracking in a couple of minutes. Do the poll. When you log on, hopefully you can see it. Just 3 quick questions for you there. Let's see. Oh, guys, if you are interested in joining A&O, do put in the chat box as well. Maybe what you're interested in. Oh, some of you are already doing it. I think I'm behind. Cool. Solicitor, that's good. My interest in A&O grow because of these webinars. Oh, amazing. I'm especially interested in employment law. Oh, good on you. Well done. That's brilliant. Also, guys, just a little pointer. If you probably already done it, but when you do use the chat box, do send it to all. That means that everyone can see it. If you're comfortable with that, it just means that everyone can see what you're writing. So it's nice and interesting. Solicitor, I'm interested in law. It's good to see. We'll just give it about another minute or so, wait for others to join. And if my panelists are here, please do unmute yourself. And well, I definitely see, let's see your camera. That'd be great, please. And I am recording this as well because we do send this out to users so that students can have a little look at this after the session as well. So we are at 2 o'clock. I'll just wait on Vicky just to make sure she's there and just make sure we've got, yeah, Peter's down there as well. Let me just change my view. Andre, I think, did you raise your hand on purpose? You can speak if so, just let me know. Maybe that was a mistake, Andre. But Andre has just said these webinars have shown me how vast law is. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm interested in becoming a solicitor. Okay, cool. Great, we've got Vicky there. So we've got Clement, Vicky, Peter, and James. We've got Sue here as well. If we do so, come to her. We'll get cracking. So welcome, everybody. Well done for turning up, by the way, because of course it's half term this week. So you're again showing your commitment on an even greater level because you're tuning into something when it's quite nice weather during your holidays. So well done. I know COVID-19 is a really difficult time, particularly for those of you who are still studying and you rely so much on the system to get you through. But well done for logging on. And what's really nice as these polls come through, I'm seeing majority year 12 and 13s on this webinar. For those of you on the panel, that's 17, 18-year-olds, just in case you didn't know. Have you been on an Allen Overy webinar series before? I'm just going to close this poll so people can see it. Let's have a quick look there. So have you been on one of these sessions before? We've got 45% have been to all of them, which is amazing because that means that you're geared up for the end of series prize. You get to be on the session with the CTO, which would be amazing. Some of them, 31%, and some of you, it's your first time, which is absolutely fine. Good to have you here. Are you interested in joining A&O potentially as a trainee? That question says. And 48% of you are very interested, and 48% of you are not sure. 3%, that's absolutely fine. No, but you're just here to learn, I'm sure. So thanks very much for doing that poll, guys. Right, journey of a graduate trainee. So we've done the technology side. We've looked beyond into different roles. Today we're looking at graduate trainees. So I wonder what we've got in store today. Let's have a quick look through. So you guys, if you haven't been on one of these sessions before, I'll quickly go through a bit of an introduction for you, just so you know who Allen and Overy are. Then we'll introduce the panelists. And the way that this session works is that they'll introduce themselves, what they do in their role, and then they will talk about their journey of how they got there. And then we go into the Q&A section where we go back to each individual person again. And then hopefully it's over to you guys in terms of what questions you want to ask. Whenever you do want to ask a question, this is how you do it. So the Q&A box, if you're on your phone or if you're on your laptop, that's where you need to put your questions, because what we'll do, we'll look through all the questions and make sure we answer all of them, as long as we're doing our jobs right. If you've got anything else to add that's maybe outside of a question, put it in the chat box. Maybe if I ask you a question like I've done at the beginning of this session, stick stuff like that in the chat box. But the Q&A, save that for questions. If you do want to raise your hand throughout the session, put your hand up and basically I'll let you speak. It's the most engaging way of talking to our panelists, but not many are brave enough to do it quite often. So let me know if you're keen to do it for this session. So Allen and Overy, you guys know me, like I'm the founder and CEO of Pathway CTM. So A&O, international legal practice. Look how many offices they've got around the world, over 40, many employees, many lawyers. But what we've learned is that lots of people actually aren't lawyers as well, which has been really interesting over this series, and 550 partners at the top of the company. Sue's the person who's made us all who's brought this all to you, I suppose, because her role in community investment makes sure that she works with companies like Pathway to make sure that people like you understand what Allen Overy do. And I guess that they can get their message out there to so many people and help lots of young people. And we're a social enterprise and we support young people. So they help us do that. So it's great that Sue's been on all of these webinars as well. So that's Allen Overy, legal practice, big one. So let's have a look at some of the panelists that we've got on today. So I'm going to hand over first to Clement. Clement, over to you, if that's okay.
Hi, can I just check everyone can hear me?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So I'm Clement, like it says, and I'm a trainee at the moment in the banking department at Allen Overy. By way of background, I went to a non-selective state school back in Norfolk, where I'm from. And then after that, I went to sixth form, where I did some A-levels in science, so maths, physics and chemistry. And then I suppose at university, I decided I'd do physics because I'd done all science A-levels, so that's what seemed to make most sense at the time. And at some point in my life, I guess I'd wanted to be a scientist or a researcher of some description. So I went to do physics at Cambridge. And I suppose at some point during my journey there, I realized that the world of science perhaps wasn't for me after all. So I went back to the drawing board and had a rethink about what careers were on offer. And I sort of completely went back to the drawing board and ignored the fact that I'd gone and done a science degree. And I'm quite glad I did, because at some point I managed to realize that a career in the law was an option for me, as it is for anyone who's done any undergraduate degree in any discipline. You really don't need to have done law at all. And in fact, there are non-graduate routes to becoming a lawyer these days as well. But I was glad that I found that I was able to become a trainee solicitor if that's what I wanted to do. So I started looking around at the firms, and Allen Overy was a particularly impressive one, of course. So I applied for a vacation scheme there, which I actually did with some of the other panelists. I did with James and Vicky back in 2017 now. And they offered us a training contract. So after doing a graduate diploma in law and the legal practice course, which is the academic and vocational stages of education, to become a solicitor in England, I was able to join the firm in February as a trainee solicitor, where now I sit in the banking department. And I think we'll talk more about what that means later on.
Brilliant intro. Thanks, Clement. So solicitor in the banking department. I understand that's very good to hear. Thanks very much. Vicky, over to you.
Hi guys, my name's Vicky. Can you hear me all right?
Brilliant.
Great. So I'm a first suite trainee in the corporate department at Allen Overy. I studied law at King's College London, and then I went straight into the LPC and then straight into the training contract. So no break in between. So, I mean, in a sense, I've had quite a conventional route into law, but I'm just going to share with you a little bit about how I got here eventually. But so before I went to King's, I was a first generation immigrant to the Republic of Ireland, which was very white back then, to be honest. And I grew up in Dublin. By the age of 16, so when I was sitting where you are now, basically, I was already sure that I wanted to become a lawyer. However, the next few years would be filled with failures for me. In my final year of secondary school, I got rejected from my dream university, which is Clements University, Cambridge. After 2 interviews, I cried for like 3 days. Luckily, I got a scholarship to King's. However, not everything was easy at King's either. In my first year of uni at King's, I lost a very big, very heated election to become part of the King's Law Society committee. As well as that, in first year, I applied to 10 or 15 different law firms for work experience schemes, and I didn't make it past even the initial online application stage for a single one of them. So having wanted to become a lawyer from such a young age, I was completely lost by the end of my first year of uni. What actually turned it around was I took some time to reflect on why I wanted to become a commercial lawyer. So during my teenage years, my parents ran a small family business. I was heavily involved. I designed flyers, did website maintenance, I even cold called customers because I speak English fluently. Unfortunately, after a few years, the company went down and my parents couldn't afford to pay for anything anymore. I wrote all the correspondence with blanks, and I accompanied my mum to meetings to help her translate. It was actually at those meetings that was the first time I'd come in contact with lawyers, real lawyers, not the TV kind. And I was impressed. I was really impressed by how organized they were with their big tabbed folders and their knowledge, their expertise, and also with the sensitivity and respect with which they dealt with us, my mum and I. And I remember thinking to myself then, that's what I want to be like when I grow up. Because what I think commercial law does is it helps businesses and people to succeed. Now, it was hard for me to put this story into words when I was 19, back when I was 20. There's a very simple explanation as to why I didn't put my story into all of those failed applications. It's because we all want to put the best side of ourselves forward to other people and hide all the bad things, right? So when I was a first year law student at these law firm events where you're standing around all these people in their crisp suits, drinking free champagne in this big shiny marble lobby, I didn't want the people around me to know that there was a time in my life when I had to count pennies to buy bread, or that my wages for my part-time work experience were all spent on helping my family pay their bills. But what I realized afterwards, when I thought about this, was that while my CV lacked office work experience and my international outlook, which all these law firms wanted, it didn't come from me having any expensive travels around the world. I had developed all these relevant skills that they wanted for a trainee anyway. I just had to talk about them. So in second year of university, I started sharing my honest reasons for why I wanted to become a commercial lawyer, which I've just shared with you. And I ended up having offers from 3 different Magic Circle law firms and 1 Silver Circle firm. I decided that Allen Overy was the best firm of them all. So that's why I'm here today. And
Brilliant.
that's my story.
That's a great intro. And guys, do make some notes about anything that you're listening to here that you want to pick up on later. Do it. And if you are doing the Q&A box, I'd put, like, for example, Vicky or Clement, and then put the questions, just so I know if you do want to ask a specific question to somebody. Thank you very much. Peter, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Everyone hear me okay?
Yep, fine.
Yeah. I hope you like the lockdown haircut I've got. Short and sweet. Yeah, so I graduated in Queen's University Belfast way back in 2008. And then I did what's called the legal practice course in Chester in England in 2009. And then I should say at Queen's University Belfast, I studied law and politics, what's called a major and minor. As long as you do a qualifying law degree, then that allows you to become qualified as a solicitor. That's something you can bear in mind. So that allowed me to do what I was interested in, like politics and history and things like that, as a minor during my degree. Anyway, so after the legal practice course in 2009, I went to Taiwan for 7.5 years and learned. Well, I was teaching English to begin with, and then I got really good Mandarin, so I started doing translation work, and then I started teaching lawyers, and I decided I would go back into law about 5 years ago now, and so you guys, I would thoroughly recommend this. I wrote a letter to a lawyer that I was aware of, and asked to meet up for lunch, and we discussed things, and she put me on to somebody, and eventually I got a legal job that way, and that was my first ever legal job. That was legal research in Taiwan. And then, so after about a year of that, I came back to the UK and started in Allen Overy's Belfast office, what's called a Legal Services Centre, and they provide legal services to the rest of the firm. So we get work from all over the world, and that's all 40 of our offices. We do work from there. Mostly London, but it is everywhere. And then I got a training contract offer early last year, and I started my training contract last September. So I've been at NO now for about 9 months, but the training contract for about 9 months. But I should point out that in Belfast, I was what's called a paralegal. You guys might know what that is, you might not. It's basically, if you're a paralegal, you're doing legal work, but you're not a qualified lawyer, and you're not you're not doing your training either. You're just doing legal work. And in ANO, we have about 100 of those in the Belfast office, and it's growing, quickly, about 25 people a year. So yeah, I mean, I guess the point that I'd like to get across in my sort of intro is that, how varied the ways are into law, and also that you don't have to follow one straight track from university into the office door. You can have a massive roundabout route like I did, and it's fine. And you don't have to nail the training contract before you finish your degree. You can do what I did and be paralegal and sort of get in and learn what law you like to do. I had a very broad experience in law in the Belfast office. I did there's different practice areas, but I covered all of them in that 2 years. It probably covered more areas doing that than in the training contract I will. So just don't worry if not everything goes to plan straight away.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much for that. And some good questions coming in already. Guys, if you're not answering them via type, we'll definitely come to them later. Sometimes it's good to do it that way too. James, over to you, please.
Hear me okay?
Yep, absolutely fine.
Perfect. Okay. Hi, guys. My name is James. As you can probably hear from the accent, I am actually Australian, but I am currently sitting in the derivatives team within international capital markets. And I am in my first seat. And I guess my background quite similar to Peter from the sound of things. So I went to a state school back home in Australia, both for primary and secondary school. And then I went into university. I studied politics and economics, which naturally doesn't really lend itself to any particular job. I found it interesting, but there were no particular jobs. And I certainly didn't have the idea of being a lawyer in mind when I was at university. So I finished my uni degree and I really didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with myself. And so I actually worked while I was at university. I started off working in a call center, and then I worked in sort of client management for a tech company, just to kind of, because I needed the income. And I did a variety of other things. I worked in local government for a little bit, and then when I finally kind of hit upon the law as an area I might like to pursue, I wasn't even sure I wanted to do corporate law, honestly. And so I worked for a coronial court doing coronial inquests. So, when people die, working out why they died in strange and unusual ways. And then I moved to the UK and I worked briefly as a paralegal for HMRC. And it was while I was doing that I started applying for training contracts. But same as Vicky, I had a number of unsuccessful attempts applying for jobs. Applying for training contracts specifically, and I had no clue why I wasn't getting anywhere. And it was only when I kind of took up I was applying for the types of firms that I was applying for that I kind of could find the words to explain my pathway into the law and why I was interested in pursuing this as a career. So Brilliant, thanks, James. Brilliant. Well, great start, guys. We've got loads of questions coming in already. I don't think I'll be asking many questions today because I know that what is it? 50% of students on the session today all have an interest in joining ANO as a trainee. So I'm sure there'll be lots of questions there. But let's just kick that off. So, guys, if you've got any questions for Vicky, do start thinking about them now. Vicky, just over to you to start with these two questions, if that's okay.
Sure, thanks, Chris. So what does a typical day look like for me? Well, I'm a big fan of timetables. So I've actually prepared this, set out a little thing. Okay, so I log on every morning at about 9 or 9:30ish. It's really chill. I have a chat with my trainer, who is the senior associate who's in charge of me and gives me work and teaches me how to be a lawyer, basically. I give her update on the various tasks that I'm doing, how they're going, and we even maybe have a chat about the previous evening, what we cooked for dinner, whatever. I check my emails in the morning as well. Probably every other day I have something urgent pop up that I have to drop everything else and get this thing done ASAP, which is actually, I love this. I love the adrenaline rush from doing it. The rest of my work comes from various associates or senior associates around the corporate department, and it really varies a lot. It could be researching law to help the associate decide how they want to go about this deal or whatever. It could be to read up on a company and write a report on well, how the company works and stuff like that. Could be to analyze a contract that the company has gone into to see if there's anything disadvantageous to our client in the contract that we need to flag to them. Or, well, as a corporate trainee, a lot of your work is actually project management. So often I'd have a big long checklist of different documents or different tasks, and I'd be emailing around or ringing around the rest of the departments in A&O to check how they're getting along with these documents or any updates on the tasks that they're doing. Now today's Wednesday. Usually on a Wednesday during lunchtime, we have a corporate core seminar, which is a lecture by the corporate department for the corporate department. It will be on an area of law or a type of work that the corporate department does. This means that you really learn a wide range of things because, well, working in corporate is so varied, because you're doing like lots of different types of things for your clients. So for example, in the corporate department, the stuff I've worked on in the last 3 months I've been here have been IPOs, which are initial public offerings, and raising money for the company from the company's shareholders, mergers and acquisitions, like helping a private equity fund buy another company to add to their portfolio. So it's really helpful to have a wide ranging education on all the different things that the corporate department does, and that's what these regular weekly seminars give us. If I still have time in the evening, I'm involved with a diversity network in A&O called SEAL, which is the Society of East Asian Lawyers. I'm on the committee there, and we have a number of projects in the pipeline. There's 9 of us on the committee. We're all East Asian lawyers. We're trainees or associates, senior associates, and 1 partner. And right now we are looking into a program to connect Asian lawyers in the London office with other lawyers in the 40+ offices that A&O has around the world who are also Asian, so that we can make a professional network there. And we're also right now looking to set up an event similar to this one actually for people who are interested in doing business in East Asia. So that's pretty much how my day gets taken up.
Brilliant. What about advice to young people on the webinar today?
I think probably what really spurred me on and helped me figure out how to advance my career was to figure out why I wanted to be a commercial lawyer. I think that's definitely the key thing you need to think about for yourself, to really reflect on why you want to do this. Because I saw a question there earlier that said, is it really as glamorous as TV makes it? Now, I think being a lawyer is really dynamic work. It's so varied and you're constantly on your feet, constantly thinking, and that makes it really exciting. But the truth is, it is hard work. It is long hours. And so the way you're going to motivate yourself when you have a late night, for example, is by remembering the reason why you wanted to be a commercial lawyer. So you need to get that really straight with yourself in order to help keep your motivation up once you actually become a lawyer as well.
I like it. Thanks, Vicky. I'm just conscious of time. A couple of quick questions for you. From Karishma, why do you think A&O was the best NC firm? Is that Magic Circle firm? Is that an acronym for that?
Yeah, I think
Yep.
so. Well, I think one of the big things that stood out to me, because I had some experience or insight at a lot of different law firms, and I really felt that at A&O there was a really truly collaborative culture, as in there were no sharp elbows. People really wanted to help each other, really wanted to work as a team, and you always felt comfortable asking anyone for help or asking anyone to explain anything to you. As well as what feeds into that as well, I think, is that A&O have a really clear strategy on how they want to become the best law firm. You know, they want to increase diversity, they want to grow in US, want to grow in China. These are all very clear strategies that they make known to everyone in the firm. And that means you can feel confident that you know where this firm wants to go and how you can contribute to it as well. And I think those two things really meant a lot to me in terms of how I saw my career progressing over the long term.
Brilliant. I'll give you one more, Vicky, for now. To Vicky, what is it like doing an LPC and what is the procedure in undertaking it? That's the legal practice course, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So everyone has to do it. I think it's actually changing in the next couple of years. So by the time you guys come down the pipeline, it's probably going to be different, actually. So I'm not sure I'm best placed to answer that.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fine. Well, Vicky, we'll move on now. Thank you very much. So we'll move over to banking and Clement, please. Typical day for you, Clement.
Okay, so a typical day. I had a long time thinking about this question, actually. It's quite a tricky question to answer. It's not that there isn't a typical day, because of course people over exaggerate. You are sat at a desk every day, so at least superficially it looks like your day's unendingly the same. You know, I'll wake up roughly 8:30 to 9, which sounds late, but it's because my commute to my desk these days is roughly 4 meters from my bed, because we're all working from home because of coronavirus. And then I'll log in, and if I was brave enough the evening before, I'll have left myself some things to pick up in the morning, rather than staying logged in until it's all done. And that will be the start of my to-do list. Or I'll usually have some things in my inbox waiting for me. It can be sometimes that you might have a quiet morning and all of your work will land on your desk at once, or even a quiet day and all your work will land on your desk in the evening. So rather than being like a steady day where you kind of have one sort of linear set of tasks to do for one boss, how it works when you're a trainee solicitor is really you'll probably pick up work from lots of people. So you'll have your trainer who might be a senior associate or an associate or a partner in the firm, and they'll be directly responsible for training you. But typically you'll and it varies from department to department in every single firm, but typically you'll go around and find some work from other people too. So it could be that you're taking work from quite a few people. So they'll hand down sort of tasks that are probably appropriate for a trainee to do, like potentially cutting the first draft of a document, so a legal document, a contract or a letter. In banking, that would be something like a facilities agreement, so the agreement that documents the credit facility between a bank or another lender and the borrower. And in banking, you know, that work is really varied these days, because although the department's called the banking team, nowadays it's a bit of an anachronism, because nowadays a lot of our clients aren't banks anymore. Really, it should be the financing team, because what we're really doing is we're helping companies raise finance for whatever it is they want to do, whether it's event-driven, like they need to acquire a company, or it's just for their general working capital. What the company needs to do is acquire some finance in some way, and we help them. If we're acting with them, we help negotiate that with their lenders, or typically we'll act for lenders in that. And if it's not drafting documents, it will just be a lot of transaction management. So really, you do feel like a messenger boy sometimes. You're certainly pushing a lot of emails around. You're collecting a lot of comments together. You have to be an extremely organized person to keep on top of everything that's coming in and not miss any important emails. And you definitely find that you are keeping checklists a lot. A lot of it would be keeping track of documents that have come in that the lender needs to see on behalf. So it doesn't even sound like particularly glamorous legal work potentially, but it's really important work. And actually the work you do as a trainee means that you see a lot of things that aren't just legal. You really get to understand the clients and the companies, and you understand them a lot better. Typically in corporate, you'll do a lot more due diligence than we do in banking, but even I get to do quite a bit of due diligence. And due diligence is something you'll hear a lot as you consider a career in the law. People talk about due diligence all the time because it is something that every trainee will do. And it's looking at a lot of sort of the information in internal documents on a company. And when you get under the skin of a company as a trainee, you really get to understand that company and how it operates and how it makes money in that market in a way that I think you don't really get to do in hardly any other job. So it's a great job, not just for, it's not just good training to become a lawyer. what you get as a trainee solicitor in a big corporate law firm like Allen Overy is the opportunity to really understand the city and how it works, how banking works, and how companies work, how companies make their money. So I think that's the best thing you get out of it, I think. And it prepares you for any career after law. You know, a lot of trainees aren't lawyers forever. Not everyone becomes a partner, as you can imagine. Hardly anyone stays around forever. But it's important that it contributes to your development as a person and to your career development. And awesome. As to advice for a young person, I'll keep it very brief, but I think I'd say follow your interests. You know, you'll always do better if you follow your interests and if you follow what you have in your mind to be a particular prescribed path to get to a certain end goal. And actually that might not, your preconception might not quite be right about that anyway. And you'll generally just do better in life if you're doing something you're interested in anyway, and you'll enjoy it a lot more. And you have to remember that most of life is the journey and not the end point. And a lot of the skills you need to be a good trainee solicitor, you'll pick up in the natural course of events. You don't need to have done a banking degree, an economics degree, or law degree per se. Of course, they're really helpful and you get as much out of them as you can. They'll be just as valuable as lots of other things you can do. But just in the normal course of events, make sure you get involved in a lot of things. Get involved in societies, in clubs, join committees when you're an undergrad. Go out with your friends and, like, you know, meet people and socialize as well. It's not, all of these things add up to make you a valuable trainee solicitor. And whatever background you ultimately come from by the time you get to this point, which may be really far off for you, whatever degree you did and whatever university you went to, that will make you a valuable asset to the firm. They're not just looking for one type of trainee solicitor. I think that's important to bear in mind.
That's brilliant. Thanks so much. A couple of questions for you, Clement. How was it doing the GDL? Could you just explain what the GDL was again, just to make sure?
So the GDL is like our crash course law degree. In a year, we do all the core academic modules that would make up a qualifying law degree. I don't know, it will probably be different by the time a lot of you are getting there, because of course some of you know about this already, but they're introducing the SQEs. And I know a lot of firms are intending to put their students on something like the GDL anyway in the future, but it won't be a requirement anymore to qualify.
Fine, it's good to know. Okay, do you think that having a maths and economics A-level is useful in becoming a banking lawyer? If so, what kind of maths is required?
I mean, it can definitely make you stand out. It definitely raises a few eyebrows when I turn in a spreadsheet or that works, or I've calculated a few figures, but it's an asset, but it's certainly not a necessity. And the maths you actually need to do never gets more complicated down sort of compound interest and things like that. You're not going to be solving. It's nothing like the sort of multivariate calculus you'll do in a physics or economics degree. So it's certainly valuable, but far from essential.
Good stuff. Thanks, Clement. And Peter, coming to you then, you're also in the banking division. Does your day vary to Clement's or over to you, I suppose, in terms of your line of sight?
Yeah, I mean, and I think as Clement touched on, Allen Overy was traditionally thought of as a banking firm, but I think banking is almost half of the firm's revenue. But in reality, it can be broken up into you know, I don't know, a dozen segments or more. And really, what we're doing is financing. That's the best way to understand the banking department. My particular area is what's called structured asset finance. And what we do is we help finance mostly the buying and selling of airplanes. Occasionally we do other things like ships, satellites as well. We've done before, but the A&O's financing department is so large that there's a huge amount of specialism. Smaller firms won't have anything like this level of specialism. They'll have like a generic banking department that will only really do sort of generic, let's call them generic banking contracts. But because the A&O is so large and so worldwide, there's industry-specific departments. There's you know, there's every kind of finance. We will offer it. We'll offer advice.
Have we just lost Peter there, I think? Just want to check. James, could you just check I can hear you okay? Or have we lost a few people? Can anyone...
I can hear you, Chris.
Oh, beg your pardon, it must have been my side. Yep, sorry, Peter. Yeah.
No, that's fine. No, yeah, I was saying it is essentially an office job. So if you like the great outdoors, this might not be the job for you. Yeah, that is a fair point. Because it's a project-based job, the work does vary quite a bit. I mean, every day I will check my emails. That's not a once a day thing for me. That is literally every 5 minutes or even less. You have to like your emails. You're in and out of documents, Word documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, PowerPoints. These are all, you know, you're spending 5-10 more hours a day on these documents. That's the sort of work you're dealing with. Language, you're dealing with text, mostly. Occasionally you're going into, like I said, spreadsheets and PowerPoints, but I don't think that's where the core actually is. Normally the core is actually in documents, in contracts. Some of these contracts are very, very large and very, very complex. Allen Overy only does complex work. It does not do simple work. There's different reasons for that, but it's partially just because we're at the top of the market and we're very expensive. So clients can only afford to use us if the work, requires that level of specialism and expertise. So if you like a challenge, a large Magic Circle law firm like Allen Overy is very good. Trying to give you a bit more information, sort of what thing I would do. I would review contracts to do with financing airplanes. At the moment, the aviation industry is very heavily affected. It was really the first industry to be affected, and it's been most hard hit. It's been basically wiped out in terms of operating, current operating operation. So what we're doing at the moment is we're helping these airlines restructure to become, to get them through the crisis, to raise new capital. And it's fun and this has happened where I've seen, decisions and emails and things during the day, and in that evening it's on the news. And that isn't unusual. I'm not boasting in that. I think most A&O trainees will have had that experience. The clients are dealing with their household names. There's big characters involved, and it's very fun it's very rewarding to be in the midst of this crisis. I mean, obviously, it's very difficult, but to be able to work from home and to sort of make a contribution and to sort of help people save jobs and save some of the best known companies in the world, I think that that's wonderful. And I keep trying to give you more information about my day-to-day, but it does vary so much. Other things might be talking to clients from all over the world. You might have an exercise. I did this recently. I was really the go-to point for an exercise with 12 different jurisdictions in Europe. And any questions came through me. I was fielding comments, from all over. And then collating those and processing them and providing them to the associate. Basically, we're the front line, as it were, dealing with the client often the most sometimes. And then we're processing that information we get from them and presenting that to the associate in a way that's effective and efficient for them in terms of time, because they're often more busy than us. So I think for us, one of our biggest jobs, most important jobs, is to sort of reduce their pressure and do the first few steps, do as much as we possibly can, so that when it gets to the associates and the partners, they're presented with a task that's almost finished, and they can just check over it and add what they need to before sending it on. You don't want to do, just forward an email and do no work. You should be always trying to help out as much as you can. I'll mention a couple more things. So I haven't even got the second question yet, so I don't want to take too much time up. But we do a lot of pro bono work. Pro bono work is it comes from the phrase pro bono publico. It means for the public good, and it's basically free legal advice we offer to the public. And I do as much of that as I can. I've advised members of the public on rent issues through the coronavirus, and again, I find that very rewarding. It's wonderful to be able to use my expertise to help out people in need. And I'll mention one more thing as well. Travel is common. It's slightly less so in the training contract because it's very structured. There's 4 what's called seats, each one 6 months long, 4 in total, so that's 2 years. And normally it's the last seat. In the NO, you'll often be sent to a foreign office. Could be any of our 40 offices around the world. But I think after that, we're doing English law, and English law, I don't know if you guys know this, but English law is it's one of the most common governing laws and contracts everywhere in the world. So you'll have English governing law contracts in Indonesia, Thailand, South America, absolutely everywhere. So English lawyers and New York qualified lawyers can work almost everywhere if you're doing contracts. So the potential to travel is sky high. And during my time in Belfast, I was seconded to Dubai for 5 weeks, and then I was also seconded to Singapore for 6 months. And that is probably, I think I was particularly lucky in that, but it wasn't that unusual either.
And Peter, thanks so much for this insight. Just to cut in there, just briefly on the next point then. So if you had to say one major top tip for young people, what would that be?
Put your best into everything that you do, and then things will follow from there. Just put your absolutely everything into it. If it doesn't work out, you did your best, and that's it. You can cross that out. It didn't work out. If as long as you do your absolutely best, there's nothing to worry about. I promise you, it will work out in the end.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Peter. And James, last but not least, international capital markets, something I learned today. Tell us a bit more about your day.
Well, actually, my day is not really what I think it will normally be like. Obviously, because everyone is on work from home, and we're doing sessions like this via Zoom rather than in person. But in terms of work, my day is really varied, to be honest. As everyone else has said, we do handle a lot of documentation, but the nature of those documents is really varied, and that's kind of quite hard to communicate. That's kind of a hard concept to understand, I get, especially if you're still a school student or recently departed school student, how documents can be different from one another, and how they can feel different, but they really do. So, for example, I've been recently dealing with kind of 5 or 6 of the largest banks in the world, and they've been organising a deal with one of the largest governments in Africa to basically fund some infrastructure, and it's super interesting work, because you can see what results from the piece of work you're doing. And I think that's great. You can open the page of the Financial Times, and that is something that's being discussed in the papers, and you're like, well, yeah, that's really cool, because I know what's going on there. I know the background to that. I know how that's come about, and I kind of know where it's going to go from here. Other interesting things I've gotten to do, I got to do some commercial research, so nothing legal at all. It was looking at kind of a company that is in a bit of trouble at the moment, and trying to work out whether the decisions that they'd made previously were having any impact on the choice that they were making now that we were dealing with. And so, a super interesting piece of commercial research to kind of, that you could really dig your teeth into, and that really had kind of no legal background to it whatsoever. Otherwise, it's, as the other guys have mentioned, I do quite a lot of similar stuff to what they do, especially as a trainee. It's a lot of kind of managing clients in terms of their expectations, and communicating with clients, and just generally building that rapport. So it is very varied, but thoroughly enjoyable thus far.
Amazing. Thanks, James. And top tips for young people? I know you've only been there 3 months, but what are your top tips to get to where you are, I suppose?
I think what I would recommend doing is maybe making yourself kind of like a 5-year plan, perhaps, or something. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but something similar to a 5-year plan, and working out where you are now, and then working out where you want to be in 5 years or something, and then trying to work back from that point that you want to be at in 5 years, working out what it's going to take you to get to where you want to be. So, obviously, because I'm a lawyer, I'm going to use the example of a lawyer, but if you want to get a training contract and you want to go into a law firm, that's your end goal. So work out what you kind of need to do before that. So before that, at some point, you'll probably need to go to university, although there are other pathways there. So, what do you need to do to get to university, or what do you need to do to get some work experience while you're at university? And then in order to get into university, you need to do well in school. So you kind of have that kind of step-by progression, and you can kind of tick off the rungs on the ladder as you make your way up it. I think that's very helpful, because if you just have the end goal in mind and you can't see the kind of the route there, it's quite hard, I think, to kind of drive yourself.
No, I love it. Thanks so much, James. That's really good insight from everybody there. I didn't want to shut any of you up because it's all great content. I'm going to go do a quick fire round for 15 minutes. We've got lots of questions and I want to get through them. Peter, coming to you first. Was knowing more than one language helpful in achieving a job in such a global firm like Allen Overy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to my my second interview in Belfast, was with the partner, Jane Townsend at the time, and my second interview, she talked about my Chinese a little bit. I asked, would I be able to use in the office? She said yes. And then after the interview, they asked me to, have a chat with the associate in Mandarin. She was from the Beijing office. And we talked about what I'd been doing in Taiwan. And I think it was partially with that, I got the job. So we, as Vicky, I think, mentioned earlier on, we are growing in China, and the Asian market is increasingly important in terms of the legal market. The firm needs language skills. I have used them mostly in Belfast, less so actually in my training contract, because like I said, the work, as I mentioned earlier, the work in Belfast office is so international. So I was reviewing contracts in Chinese, and I did manage to do, while I was in Singapore, I did do some language stuff, Chinese language stuff in Hong Kong. I was there for a couple of weeks. In terms of London, it is English, and that's fine by me. English is good. English is easy. It's my first language. That's fine. But even if you're not, reviewing, even if you're not at a level where you can review legal documents in a foreign language, that's fine. Even if you can just have a basic conversation with a client in their native language, that can make a massive difference. You can build a rapport. I remember in Singapore, English is their first language, actually, almost always. But the first, they have two sides to their business card. The first side is English, the back is the Chinese. And so my sort of party trick at sort of these events would be to turn the back business card and read their Chinese name to them, and they thought this was just amazing. But it's just these small things, and it's sort of being able to show interest in the client's culture and able to speak to them in their language. Yeah, I think it is very useful.
Good stuff. Thanks, Peter. Vicky, a question here. As a BAME woman, how do you find working at A&O? Is it a good working environment? If that's okay for you, Vicky.
I'm so glad someone asked this question because it's so important to me as well. I actually didn't know that that statistic of 19%. I don't know where you got it, but that's actually not how I feel at A&O at all. I don't feel like the minority. I've got 3 points here. Firstly, I think diversity is so key to the firm strategy. Across the firm, everyone from the managing partner and senior partner all the way down, everyone's really, really keen on encouraging diversity and pushing diversity. There are so many initiatives, so many networks, and just so many events are dedicated to increasing diversity. The second thing is that part of the reason for this actually is that A&O as a firm acknowledges that our clients are diverse. So if you want to appeal to clients, then you need your lawyers to be diverse as well when you're trying to get their work. And so they will always, so they are really happy to encourage diversity and to allow diverse BAME lawyers to flourish at the firm. And the third thing is because of all your colleagues are also going to be either diverse or very internationally minded, because, well, actually, what I remember when I first started my training contract, on the first day, my supervisor told me, she said, the fact that you made it here means that you're really smart, really intelligent, and really hardworking. So those are things I'm not going to question about you at all. And the thing is, that's everyone at Allen Overy. Hearing that meant a lot to me, but it also showed me that all my colleagues are also really smart, really open-minded, really hardworking people who won't be closed-minded. So there won't be any discrimination, won't be any bigotry, because they won't hire you otherwise. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks very much, Vicky. Clement, I'm going to come to you with this one. They're just talking about retention rate, and does A&O plan to keep all their trainees, or do you personally feel like there's quite a lot of competition between your peers?
Oh, that's way above my my pay grade to comment on future retention rates. But historically, retention rates do tend to be typically good, and A&O's approach has usually been that when they're hiring someone to be their trainee, they're hiring someone that they want to keep as a lawyer for as long as they can, and this is someone that could even potentially be partner material. So they're definitely looking to take people on as trainees that they're interested in keeping for the long term and developing you, and they do invest in your training.
So there's not a big drop off that you're expecting, nothing like that, no?
No, traditionally it hasn't felt that trainees are at each other's throats or anything. It's actually felt like one of the nicest firms to work in, I think. If you look across the city, it's one of the more collegiate firms, I think. Wow. And trainees get on really well and definitely do collaborate and reach out to each other for help.
Thanks so much, Clem. It's interesting that maybe the students felt another side of things there. So thanks for fixing that one up. Emily, I know you've wanted this question, so I'm going to say it and see who can answer it. With the SQE being introduced in September 2021, how do you think it will affect students not studying a law degree? Would they be at any disadvantage? Do you know how the preparation course for the SQE will be carried out and their costs? Does anybody have any insight there?
I think we're actually being consulted at the moment by BPP, because that's the institution that ANO uses to put it through the GDL and the LPC at the moment. So we're being consulted as to what we think would work well for the SQE. So we do have a little bit of insight as to what they're considering. What I would say for anyone who's worried about being a non-law grad and then having to go through the SQE, there is definitely going to be something in place. I would almost guarantee it to replace the GDL, because it's just realistically firms at the moment hire 50% non-law grads, there or thereabouts. It's about half and half. And so they are going to put something in place to ensure that those 50% who they're currently hiring are not going to be disadvantaged. I mean, it's in the firm's interests and indeed in the education providers' interests to make sure that the students they're taking out to firms are well trained. So something will be put in place. I'm guessing it's probably not going to look too dissimilar to the GDL at the moment. So yeah, don't be worried. I wouldn't be too worried about that at the moment. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, James. So while I've got you, briefly, what are the working hours like as a trainee? What would you say if you were down the pub at the moment?
They're super variable, I would say, at the moment. So there's kind of quite a lot of ebb and flow with work. So some days I've had days where I've had deals closing and I've been working quite long hours. You know, I'll have to work into the evening. And then I've had other days where I haven't had much, honestly, to do at all. And so it balances out. And I think probably we're in an unusual situation at the moment where we would usually probably have slightly more work on than we do right now, but the work levels have held up pretty well generally. So hours are variable and workload variable at the moment as well.
Thanks. We're ripping through them. Last 10 minutes now. So Peter, for you, what tips do you have for first year law students applying for first year schemes?
I mean, that's a good one as well. You're probably aware that ANO has a scheme called ANO First, and you can encourage you to look into that. I've met people on ANO First, and they do get a lot out of it. It's not something I applied for. It's not something that's so easy for people studying in Northern Ireland. I guess people in England and South East England in particular sort of have that advantage. I guess they're looking for people who just that they want to be able to see from your application that you have the potential to go into ANO, and it's such an early stage that's hard to tell, but there are things. So if you have an interest in I've mentioned languages is my background. Languages are good. Travel, if you've been abroad, lived abroad, if you have an international background, it might be that English is your second language, or that you have another second language that's interesting to them. If you've got an interest in finance or economics, this is interesting to them, because it might be that you don't need all of your economic skills as a lawyer, but your clients often will have an extreme interest in that. And if you understand that, that can be a big advantage, because you know where they're coming from. All these sort of things, this is what they're looking for in your application. They're looking for the potential, the interest, let's say. Maybe, I don't think any firm expects you to have reams of legal experience at that stage. That's what the scheme is for, is to give you it. What they're just looking for is the potential, and if you're able to show the interest, I think that would make a good application.
Thanks. And guys, remember, because we're running out of time, do put your hand up and you'll skip the queue and you can ask your questions, because there's so many good questions going. We could do this for 2 hours, to be honest. I won't ask you guys to do that, don't worry. Neem, I don't know if anyone knows anything about apprenticeship schemes or the labour market, but a really good question from her. Would any of you consider doing a solicitor degree level apprenticeship? I have an offer of an apprenticeship and an offer from LSE for law, but I'm not sure what path to choose. Tough one, but good position. Do you
Yeah,
guys
that's
know
a tough
anything?
one, but you're very, very lucky to be in
Yeah.
that position. I know that a lot of prestigious firms now are starting to offer solicitor apprenticeships more and more. A&O hasn't yet, I don't think, but you have firms like I think White and Case perhaps, and a few, or Jones Day certainly, I think. So start more and more taking on a couple of solicitor apprentices every year, and I think that will just grow in the future. If you've got a great set of A levels behind you, and you know you want to be a lawyer, if you get to spend 6 years as a solicitor apprentice, of course that's like spending 6 years as a trainee solicitor. That, you know, being a trainee is probably the most valuable experience you get when it comes to being a good lawyer at the end of the day compared to university. But at the same time, you'll miss out a lot on the university experience. I think you'll miss out a lot on what it's like to sort of be in societies and stuff. And there's a whole sort of lifestyle that goes with uni that you might not want to turn away from as such. So you'll have to keep asking people that question, I think.
And Neem, do let us help you out if we can. Clement, while we've still got you here, the question for you, is it important to read articles from newspapers, magazines like The Economist, Financial Times, and keeping in touch with the global financial situation for your job?
People always say yes, I think, to that. I agree that it is important to read those things, but also it's important. It's often quite difficult to understand these, I think, when you haven't had any sort of business education before. So you can, before kind of approaching this, just throwing yourself in the deep end and immersing yourself in language you don't quite understand. There's books you can read, like How to Read the Financial Pages and things like that, which just sort of walk you through what all these terms actually mean. Because before I mean, until really recently, I didn't really know what a lot of these words meant. So it's, yeah, when you don't understand something, look it up.
Definitely, thank you. And Vicky, back to you. How do you balance your personal life and work-life balance, especially when being a graduate trainee is so demanding?
I think A&O really helps in this regard, in that there's no FaceTime culture. There's no, what I mean by that is there's no requirement for your supervisor to see that you're constantly at your desk and to see that you're constantly available on the phone or on email all the time. Well, all you need is, as long as you get the work done on time, then your time is for yourself. So if you want to take time out during the day, have a long lunch, start later or start earlier and end earlier, however you want to manage your hours, you're really free to do so. I think A&O gives trainees a lot of autonomy to choose to control yourself and how your own working day goes about. So it's quite easy to fit in downtime alongside working life, especially now that we're working at home.
Definitely. I've got more questions saying, would you recommend university versus a degree level apprenticeship? I'm not going to ask that question. I think that's more stuff that Pathway can help you with, just looking into why you want to go to uni, maybe versus what the opportunity is as an apprentice, because these guys all did the legal route. What would you say is the best way to make your application stand out? Any top tips from you guys, because you've all been successful? Anything, potentially an interview as well.
The reason I didn't jump out immediately was because I feel I'm afraid of repeating myself. But I think what might have made my application stand out was just the international experience and the foreign language, and that's what worked for me. But there's lots of different ways of doing it. Other people come into the firm from finance background or economics background. Some people have special industry expertise. I don't think, I'm not aware of anybody in our department who has come from aviation, but that is definitely a way you could come into it. If you've got an in-depth knowledge of the work that our clients are doing, Allen Overy will absolutely love that. So yeah, there's different ways to make your application stand out. But one thing to bear in mind, actually, one thing does come to me, it is a global firm. So I think any international connections are valuable there. And maybe it's a year out, or maybe it's an exchange scheme you did as a teenager, or maybe one of your years university was spent at a university in Europe, Erasmus, this sort of thing. I think that all helps because the firm is so close. I know it sounds almost like a cliche, but it really is. And I suppose once you work there, you really see it on a day-to-day basis. Most of the people I work with, about half are in London, but the other half are everywhere in the world. And so I think if you can have some sort of understanding of the position they're in, and sort of maybe a little bit of understanding of some of the cultural issues that can arise and things like that, I think I'll really appreciate that.
And I'll just come to James in a second. James, you've been there 3 months, so maybe talking us through your interview might be interesting and how you nailed it. But just before you do that, guys, please do leave any comments in the chat box here. of how you found the session. I think it's been amazing. It's a shame it's going to be drawing to a close soon. But James, any top tips for your interview, I suppose? Is that me freezing? Can anyone hear me? No, sorry.
All right, am I back again?
Oh yeah, you're back. I wasn't sure if it was me. Okay.
No, sorry, I apologize. I think I've got 4 people in my household who are all taking calls at the same time. I think it's kind of a running problem for everyone.
No.
So sorry, unless I missed anything, the question was just about my application experience.
Yeah, and you've only been there 3 months, so I wonder if the interview's still fresh in your head.
Well, actually, so Vicky and Clement both came in at the same time I did. So we're all in at this kind of 3-month period. But we actually had our interviews something like 2 years ago because we needed to go through the GDL and the LPC first. But from what I remember from the interviews, and certainly from the extensive application process, which you may all get to experience, and it is a joy, I can confirm. That it is very much a kind of a quality over quantity game. It's kind of very tempting because quite a lot of the application forms that you see in the near future will probably look very similar. It's very easy to sort of fall into the trap of just copying and pasting answers across from one application to the next and kind of making your applications look very similar because you figure different firms aren't going to see the same application, so who's going to know? But really, speaking as someone who had kind of went through the 3 or 4 rounds of the application process, it really does make a huge difference if you take the time to do your research, kind of read up, and this applies equally to non-law applications as well, I suppose, to do your research on the firm that you're applying to and tailor your application to that firm. So for law firms, they will generally ask you kind of competency questions, and those competency questions will be quite broad and they won't be specific to the firm, but the real skill is kind of being able to tie those questions back to the firm itself, and making them kind of relevant to the type of work that the firm does. Equally, when you're discussing your own work, think about why that experience makes you a better fit for the firm than someone else, perhaps. If you've had responsibility in terms, and it could be as simple as, if you've got a supermarket job stacking shelves, you think about what kind of responsibility you had to take on when doing that job, and tie it back to why that's relevant to working in a law firm or any other job you'd want to do.
Thanks, James. And guys, look, we haven't managed to get to all your questions today. If you do have further questions, just email into student@pathwayctm.com and we can help you with those, and we can make sure we get those answered. But well done in all the questions that you have been asking. I didn't want to interrupt the guys because the stuff they were speaking about was so insightful, and it's great to hear all their different stories. I really do think it's been a fantastic session. Next week, we've got a focus on corporate lawyers. And how to make it happen. So there we go. So we'll be hearing not just from those who are maybe recent into the company, but those from different levels of experiences as well. So that'll be a really interesting session for next week. So you can continue those sessions, on the being a solicitor, being a lawyer. You can continue those next week. And so if we have missed any of your questions, do it next week, so to speak. A couple of takeaways here, saying that they thank you for the insightful session. I have learned the importance of being proactive. Andre says, love this session. Definitely considering A&O after university, which is great. I think the appeal of learning extra languages has come through. Peter, thanks for that. Here we go. Sanya, maybe the last point I'll leave you on. This was a really great, thank you so much. I learned about how you can approach law from different backgrounds and what the process is actually like, as well as being open-minded and having an international mindset. That's amazing. Karishma, thank you so much. This was a really interesting session, and I have a whole page of notes. So you guys really have helped there. Emily, thank you to everyone for this. It's been really useful. And Patricia at the end, really amazing to listen to some personal experiences, their backgrounds and why they chose A&O. So some really, really good insights there. James, Peter, Vicky and Clement, I could have done a whole hour with all of you. So thank you very much indeed. And students, if you haven't already, I think we've got a Netflix competition on Instagram at the moment. Check us out at Pathway CTM. But hopefully see you next week, and thank you very much to everyone at Allen Overy for today.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Thanks very much.
Okay, best of luck.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah, good luck.
Cool. Well done, guys. Great session.